What is the strangest thing about Jared Nomak's anatomy? What can the autopsy footage of one of the Reapers tell us? How does their biology differ from classical vampires? And what finally happens to their teeth? This video answers these and other curious questions regarding Blade 2 movie. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and give the video a thumbs up. It really helps the channel.
Where did you get that scar on your chin?
Childhood accident.
Jared Nomak is a memorable character in Blade 2, mysterious, ruthless, and surprisingly charismatic. He combines dramatic depth, a unique visual style, and palpable tragedy. His image seems to have inspired the designers of the prototype game. As a rule, an internal drama is what makes antagonists truly powerful. Nomak's goal is not mass infection and domination. The virus he carries is merely a tool, and of course, his curse. His main goal is to take revenge and find death in a fight with someone who can stop him. And it's Blade, who turns out to be that someone. Despite his monstrous strength and aggression, Nomak does not see himself as the pinnacle of vampire evolution. He knows there is no place in this world for beings like him. We know almost nothing about his past except for one important fact. He is the son of Damaskinos himself, one of the leaders of the vampire community, and this is exactly what becomes the cause of his torment. Obsessed with the idea of creating a perfect species, Damaskinos did not hesitate to experiment even on his own blood. Over the millennia, he had many children, and his parental instinct had long turned to dust. From the dialogues of the characters, we understand that Nomak escaped from his father quite recently, which slightly contradicts the plot logic, but that's not the point. The main thing is this: in his pursuit of improving the vampire virus, Damaskinos turned his own son into a carrier of a new mutation, the Reaper virus, designed to eliminate all weaknesses of the classic kind. To a large extent, it worked, since Reapers are not susceptible to garlic or silver. They are incredibly hard to kill and much stronger and faster than common vampires. Even the anticoagulant that tore Frost apart is simply digested and processed by their bodies, as we saw with Nomak. Biologically, the Reaper virus is not just a pathogen, but a deeply embedded DNA program that modifies tissues to such an extent that each organ, and in fact each cell, gains autonomy. We will talk more about these details later. More than resistance to anticoagulants and the ability to process toxic substances require not only transformation of the immune system, but a complete transformation of enzymatic pathways.
Daywalker.
And you've probably noticed that Damaskinos and the Reapers share similar visual traits: a deformed chest, thin pale skin, and a hairless body. In Damaskinos' case, this is not necessarily due to old age. He is a vampire obsessed by genetic enhancements, and he used many of these enhancements, for example, in order to prolong life himself. Later, he used them in creating a new variety of vampire virus. Nevertheless, Damaskinos considers the new virus strain a failure, not only because susceptibility to sunlight was not eliminated, and not because Nomak rebelled against his father. The new virus spreads almost exponentially, and the thing is, Reapers prefer vampires as food, though they do not shun humans either. Their insatiable appetite and need for fresh blood, literally every couple of hours, threaten the existence of the established vampire civilization. This is a consequence of the virus's flaw. Reapers have an extremely unstable energy metabolism. Most likely, the Reaper's body cannot store nutrients and functions in a state of constant deficiency. Such incredible resilience of the Reapers may be due to their organs and tissues being in a state of continuous regeneration. And after a few hours without food, the Reaper's body initiates a process of self-digestion. Thus, for a Reaper, blood is not just nutrition, but fuel necessary to keep the body from entering a self-consuming state. This explains both the frequency of intake and the strict selectivity regarding its quality. Probably vampire blood has higher energy caloric value, but Nomak himself does not need frequent meals. Nomak, as the virus carrier, is the strongest representative of the new race, and unlike his kin, also retains intellectual abilities. The other Reapers cannot boast of this. But we're here to discuss the strange anatomy of the Reapers and Nomak in particular, and there are indeed oddities in their anatomy. The first are related to their main visual trait, the oral cavity. You've probably wondered while watching the film, what happens to the Reaper's lower teeth? Those human-looking ones when they open their tri-split mouth? Those teeth are simply no longer there. Or are they the same teeth used to inject the paralytic agent? No, not these. The film repeatedly makes it clear that there is no resemblance of human lower teeth in the Reaper's mouth, including the autopsy scene, where Nisa states that their lower jaw lacks bones, as well as teeth. Again, excluding the ones they use to inject the neurotoxin. In fact, the absence of bones in the lower jaw is anatomically logical, since with such a wild metabolism, every gram of extra bone mass is just ballast. It's possible that reapers have something like a cartilaginous elastic plate in the tissues of the lower jaw that serves as a carcass. But I should note that some early reaper concepts did include bones and teeth in the lower jaw. The jawbone was also supposed to consist of two parts that splay apart, which looks pretty cool in the concept art, which, however, we don't see in cinematic version.
This is a good news, bad news scenario, Jared.
In the cinematic version, Blade finds a lower jaw dental prosthesis in the sewers. The film thereby tells us that for disguising themselves as humans, reapers, including Nomak, supposedly use prosthetic lower teeth. Blade is probably wondering how these prosthetics are fixed in the reapers' mouths. What if the reaper virus grants tissues unique flexibility and the ability to pull in the prosthesis into the boneless jaw? This, by the way, is closer to mollusk biomechanics than mammalian physiology. All this could have been an interesting anatomical detail if the creators had shown any interaction between reapers and these dental prosthetics. For example, if they simply fell out of the mouth when opening it. But these teeth just disappear and then reappear when the reaper closes its mouth. This applies to almost all CGI effects. The scene where the Reaper bites Lighthammer was made using an animatronic puppet, and that puppet had no lower teeth. So according to the script's idea, off-screen, the Reaper either spat out or simply lost the dental prosthesis. These inconsistencies also apply to the tongue, the human tongue, which suddenly vanishes after the jaw opens. Then, the Reaper tongue, which is also a virus carrier, emerges from somewhere in the throat. But overall, regarding the tongue, the filmmakers made it clear that the Reaper's tongue in its default state is not necessarily deeper than the oral cavity and also functions like a human tongue for speech. We can see all these in the scenes with Nomak. Yes, overall, the Reaper tongue is a unique biological tool. It must have an extremely strong muscular base within the skull structure, and its internal anatomy may resemble a biological analog of a hydraulic system. And of course, it has especially sensitive nerve endings capable of distinguishing blood types in a victim's body, at minimum, arterial and venous. But the strangest trait of the Reaper's jaw facial apparatus physiology is that despite lacking bones in the lower jaw, it still externally matches human anatomy. And the oddities do not end there. Ahead of us is an autopsy scene of one of the Reapers, weakened due to the lack of blood, whose body has already begun to consume itself, starting with the intestines, since the intestines are the least necessary as they do not consume solid food. And it is worth noting right away that Reaper's deformed and reinforced chest actually does not have more ribs than a human chest, which you could think earlier. In the autopsy scenes, we can observe two fundamental physiological details that significantly affect the anatomy of the Reapers as a whole. First, their heart is encased in a fairly massive bone shell. Second, which we already know, each of their organs, each cell, is an independent living organism craving food even after brain death. Or more precisely, after the death of the centralized nervous system. For them, such concept as biological brain death is relative. And now, let's dig in more details. Remember the strange moment when, feeding on Lighthammer, the Reaper opened gill-like structures in the shoulder blade area? In some references, they are actually labeled as gills. At the same time, mucus produced by the adrenal glands was secreted from the back, which Blade and the team later used to attract Reapers. So based on the autopsy scene, these gills are essentially the Reaper's lungs that have come out to the surface. Lungs that during feeding may lack space in the chest since there is a large protected heart, since the Reaper feeds by saturating each organ individually. And the strangest part is that the Reaper's physiological makes it possible for the lungs to come out through the back of the chest. This applies not only to the structure of the skin, which is visible, but also to the bones. That is, on the back of their massive chest, they still have a weak spot. The external gills apparently provide not only gas exchange, but also discharge of excess heat generated during intense muscular activity. We can also assume that the Reaper's respiratory system operates in two modes. The first is standard oxygenation through pulmonary respiration. The second is additional oxygenation through the back. For example, during feeding. Given the insane metabolism of the Reapers, their tissues may require significantly more oxygen. The fact that each Reaper's organ is saturated with blood separately is also confirmed by the peculiar structure of their stomach. I still believe it's a stomach. Two esophagi led to it from both sides, also because they bypass the large heart from the sides. And upon entering the stomach, the blood simply spills into the abdominal cavity through this technical opening. The Reaper's heart, protected by shell, likely functions at high speeds, pumping blood at such a rate that the body can quickly saturate each organ individually. All this essentially imitates the process of heavy internal bleeding. Heavy bleeding as a result of heavy feeding. Such a method of blood saturation is also a physiological advantage of the Reapers in terms of their advanced resilience, because the Reaper's organs and the entire body do not depend on a centralized circulatory system. In this regard, each Reaper organ is autonomous. Essentially, the Reaper's physiology is one big biological drip feed system. Yes, an incredibly gluttonous mechanism, unable to efficiently store and use energy to sustain itself. But one way or another, Nomak's story is not a story of all-consuming revenge. It's a story telling that it is not necessary to kill your sister to close the circle. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe to the channel and support it with your activity. It means a lot to me. Bye.